before we begin, I will offer a brief visual description of myself. I am a short white man with some brown hair left on my head, and in a blue suit with a white shirt. And I am Scott Rothkopf, the Pratt Brown Director of the Whitney Museum. And I want to also acknowledge that we are on Lenape-Hoking, the ancestral homeland of the Lenape people. And the idea of embracing Native artists and communities at the Whitney is something that is very important to all of us and to me personally. And if you would like to see any work by Indigenous artists, I encourage you to visit the remarkable show, Shifting Landscapes, from our collection that is on view right now on the 6th floor. Well, maybe not right now during this lecture, but you can come back another time to see it. And this lecture series was created in honor of Ambassador Walter Annenberg with the late Steve Ames, a beloved longtime Whitney trustee. So I'm supposed to introduce Christine, but I feel that she probably needs no introduction to most of the people in this room who are so familiar with her work and such incredible admirers and fans from near and far, as I am, from nearer, I guess. But I do want to acknowledge that this year's Annenberg Lecture, of course, as you all know, is on the occasion of Christine's remarkable survey exhibition that is on view throughout this building, from the 8th floor to the 3rd floor that you just saw and to our lobby. It surveys about 15 years of Christine's art. And she has truly, during that time, I think, forged an incredibly groundbreaking practice. But the Whitney is proud, in fact, that we have a history that even, I think, technically, yes, it does, predates the earliest work in this show, going back to 2007, when Christine founded our Whitney Signs program in our education department. She helped establish our ASL vlogs. And she has also appeared in a variety of contexts at the Whitney. The Billboard Too Much Future in 2018. She was in the 2019 biennial. I see one of the co-curators here tonight, Jane Panetta. And she's an important part of our collection. So this is a kind of homecoming for us. And maybe that's another reason why I don't feel that I have to introduce her that much. But I think what you will see tonight is something that you will really find very profound and enjoy. I think a lecture might be a little bit of a misnomer. It is a lecture, but it's also a sort of piece of performance art to some degree, and we'll talk about that after. I want to acknowledge my wonderful colleague, Jenny Goldstein, our Jennifer Rubio Associate Curator, and her co-curators of this exhibition, Pavel Pies from The Walker and Pish, and we're very grateful to work with The Walker, where the show will travel next year. And also Tom Finkelperl. Are you somewhere here? Oh, you're hiding. Hi, Tom. And the three of them did just such a remarkable job in curating this exhibition. It was a great collaboration between them and the artists and really the whole Whitney staff. I want to say how proud I am to work at this museum with such an incredible, dedicated group of people, and how seriously everybody took the responsibility of presenting Christine's work here. And it was truly something that we all learned about her art. We all learned a lot, in fact, about deaf culture and what it means to welcome an artist of this incredible stature into our galleries, and also the audiences that have been coming here. So with that, I want to stop talking, and I want to introduce Christine, or welcome her to the stage. I will sit down, and she will perform Deaf Death, and then I will join her on stage for a few questions afterwards. Thank you so much.
So before I begin, I want to do a visual description of myself as well. I am an Asian short petite woman with her hair clipped back behind her ears. I have glasses. I'm wearing a black dress, funerally inspired, with black and white flowers. And then I have flowers, silver earrings, and a silver necklace as well. And then I have silver strappy heels. Let's begin. Deaf Death. I feel like death is coming for us. More and more. It's getting closer and closer. It's looming. Okay, so I'm older, I'm wiser these days, I'm a mom. And so I've thought about different questions that I didn't ask myself when I was younger. And what I've realized is that death has always been lurking in the corner, watching me, approaching me. And I didn't notice it until I've gotten to where I am now. Now, I've collected some examples of this throughout the years because of all the technical and scientific advances that we see now. We have ChatGPT. We have more access to more information. And I'm disabled. I'm a deaf person. I see these things and I see patterns and I've seen echoes. And what I've collected is what I'm sharing with you today. So if you type deaf on your phone most likely will autocorrect it to death. The same way that fuck gets changed to duck. And you're like, I'm trying to say the F word, right? But now they seem to allow us to type that without autocorrecting us to quack. You also see here when one types deaf, dead comes up as an option as well. And for those who might not know, D and F are also right close to each other on the keyboard, but also F sounds like TH. But I think sometimes the phone thinks it's a typing error, but it's not. I'm trying to say deaf. So growing up, I didn't really understand this confusion, but now I do, because deaf for many people sounds like death, especially if you're not watching or lip reading the person who's speaking. Tricks of spoken language, right? So this is a deathly typo. So going through these clips, I remember that it's not just that I see deafness as a cinematic device to cause fear. I've also seen this in movie posters growing up. So deafness is either something that makes you die or this impending threat. Death is coming for us. This movie poster is from 1993. The character is a deaf athletic trainer whose client is trying to kill her. The actor is deaf, Marlee Matlin. So the writer Elizabeth DeFlo wrote this in 2017 as a Gallaudet University graduate student, talking about the idea of time theft and how time theft is equaling, to me, deaf death. The reason being is because time theft is speaking to the loss of labor that deaf people experience when navigating a society that is not built for them. The loss of energy, the experience of language deprivation. So many of us don't have full access to language our whole lives. And because of that, we miss that window for language acquisition. And because of that, we struggle with our mental health, our emotional stress. We feel alienated from society. We experience exclusion, isolation. Because we don't have that access, all of this is just coming from the eugenics ideology that there are certain people better than others, right? And that has led to everything that we experience, that death is coming for us. But really, autism is the innate, deep desire to erase deaf people off the face of this earth. This meme says, if an accident does happen, I hope he kills me, because I don't think I'd be a very inspiring disabled person. And this brings me to the concept of inspiration porn, and I want to talk about that because with inspiration porn, it usually is this experience where if a person is an amputee, society is celebrating them for still being able to drive, still being able to go to school, or if somebody loses an ear, they can still hear, look what they're doing. They're doing the most basic things, holding a cup of water, and everyone is applauding them despite their disability, right? And the idea is that it's supposed to make people feel better because these people who are disabled can still do things. So this is inspiration porn, but is it true? The only disability in life is a bad attitude? This is my friend Andrew Fisher, who's also a comedian and maybe inspiration porn star. Yes, I love this concept. Here is the disability Venn diagram that explains it all. Because everything must be measured when it comes to disability. So let's use a Venn diagram. But I actually think this is quite interesting because it goes from not disabled enough to too disabled. And if you're too disabled, the solution is that there's always assisted dying. Death is coming for us. But death is coming for us. And like I've said, You can see it. You can see it in society. I've observed it. I've seen it around universal access signs. Like, look, this car wants us dead. They're trying to run us over. And I've documented this over the years. I've got proof. But here, disability is just out of order. It's broken. If in an emergency, I guess we just have to call and wait to die as everything burns around us, death is coming for us. In an emergency, apparently we go one way and everyone else gets to go the other way and live. Right? How am I going to wheel down a stairwell? Death is coming for us. Also, it seems like disability is trash. They just want to throw us away. Look at us. Trash again. So this is in Berlin, and there is a ramp over here that the scaffolding is kind of marking. And you can see it's telling us that the trash is there, mothers can go there, and disabled people can go there. Well, I'm all three. This is the way I'm going. Death is coming for us. And because of that, I'm stressed. I need a break. Maybe I should just light it up. Or maybe I should just stop being disabled. Just get up out of the chair. Walk it off. In 2024, this huge story came out in the news, and the undertone of this was that nobody's really interested in learning sign, and it was saying that hearing aids may help people live longer because it reduces the risk of death by almost 25% based on a new study. Now, deaf people basically have shorter lifespans, but I'm only 80% disabled, so this stat feels right for me. So there's a lot of messages in the news, in the media, from society telling us that to be deaf is to die, that they want us dead, that we are being killed. So this is another issue that we're seeing in the deaf community that we all know about, which is gene therapy. And I feel like with gene therapy, that has become this huge leap forward towards death. I feel like death is coming for me closer and quicker. And oftentimes the response to concerns around gene therapy are like, oh no, it's just this one gene that we're going to get rid of or fix. But the truth is once that door opens, it doesn't close. Death is coming for us. So here's a tweet from Yoko Ono from 2019 saying, life is full of messages given to us by, quote, sign languages to make us wiser. I saw this tweet and I saw sign languages in quotes. Why? Is it because sign language isn't real? Is sign language happening? Death is coming for us? Or are we already dead? R.I.P.
Thank you so much. That was incredible. We're all like, I'm like a little bit in awe. I also am a little afraid of blood and guts. So there was a point where I used your trigger warning, I confess.
Well, I'm good. I'm glad you did. At least I gave everyone that notice. I'm thoughtful in that way.
Yeah. So one thing I would maybe just like to start with, and I should say to the audience that if you're triggered by the idea of a long Q&A, don't worry, that's not what this is. We had this Annenberg Lecture, which I mentioned in the introduction has been going on for a long time, had really not been much of a lecture the last few years, or more than the last decade, in fact. It was generally a conversation between the director of the museum, Adam Weinberg, my predecessor, and an artist. And since last year, when I became director, we've kind of tried to refashion this somewhat. And Nancy Baker Cahill, who's a digital artist, did the first one. And we're trying to really spotlight the artist's presentation. So the Q&A is more just a kind of thing after. And Christine, I feel like you did such an incredible job. And I am already wondering, like, is lecture even the right word for what you did? Is this a performance? I'm thinking back to some of your earliest work, which involved you performing we have videos of that upstairs. We see videos of you and your husband Thomas, who's also an artist, performing together. You've staged performances that also you don't appear in. And I wonder, like, if you could talk a little bit about this sort of performative aspect of your work in relation to the lecture that we just saw, and even if that's the right term for it.
I feel like you could say that. When it comes to an art talk or an art lecture, that's probably different than the traditional lecture. Today, I felt like I had more of a performance lecture. Like you asked, in the beginning of my career, I did do performance a lot. It was part of my practice, but I found it quite depleting energy-wise, especially being in the group of people who were performing. I had to direct, conduct, I had to create the score, write parameters, make decisions, and perform within a group. And so I said to myself that I wanted to remove myself from the group performances. I wouldn't mind returning to it a little bit more. I needed a break, but I think that future performances, I'd either do them solo by myself or allow the group to perform and be more the conductor of the concept and have it be executed by others. So I'm coming back to performances. I've got some ideas percolating. I feel ready. But this is also kind of how I work. I overuse some kind of medium and then I just need a break from it. And I go away and I do other mediums or work with other mediums and then I come back. This is similar to how I was working with sound. I was working with sound all the time and then I needed a break. And now I'm kind of back. So I feel the same for performance. To me, performance art is an entirely different part of my practice, but part of my practice. You can see that it still is part of my practice, but I also have others like sculpture, drawings, and more up on the 8th floor.
Yeah, well, I love in a way that this event that we're all a part of tonight is a kind of extension of that exhibition and offers us another way into the work. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the history of death. I know it's something you've presented in different versions before. And do you just go along collecting these video clips or sharing them with your friends? Have you been doing that for years? Do you have an archive of thousands of examples? And how do you choose them and share them? And kind of what's the gestation of a project like this?
So it actually started because my friend Jeffrey Mansfield, who is a deaf architect, who now lives in Boston. I'm looking at deaf friends. Oh, he moved to Rochester. Okay. Thank you for fact-checking me, deaf audience members. So he's in Rochester and we're friends. And him and I had talked about the idea of doing a book around deaf materials and deaf spaces. He actually embarked on a cross-country trip where he went to the deaf schools around the US that had been closed for the most part and photographed different ephemera like cups, mugs, shirts, these things, and shared the pictures with me. And I felt like it was really exciting because unfortunately, the deaf community hasn't had the privilege to be good at archiving our history and our presence. I mean, even Gallaudet University, the only liberal arts university for the deaf in the world, has an archive, and that's not in good shape. But if we don't archive our history, if we don't document our history, then we don't exist in human history. So Jeffrey and I talked about the idea of making a book, but he had other things that he got busy with as far as his work is concerned. And I had the opportunity to then work with primary information. By next year or so, I will have a book around deaf material. So I've been collecting this stuff for a while, whether that's with Jeff on my own or specifically about deaf death, as you're asking. So I would go on Instagram, TikTok, I'd read the news. I would get bits and pieces from friends as well. Like some of my deaf friends know what I'm looking for. And so if they see things that I'm looking for out in the wild, like depictions of disability signage, they'll send it to me. But this work has become this performance talk. I feel like this is very much the right time to do it. The first time I performed Deaf Death was at LA Phil in Los Angeles, California through the Red Cat Theater, which was a shorter talk and also a little bit more mixed. But today it was more morbid than ever.
I felt that. I also felt that there was obviously a lot of humor in the performance in terms of the way that you would take these things that seem so like wrong and we're like laughing at them, but they're cringy. And, you know, I was thinking about how much of your use of humor and anger we see in other parts of the show, like the degrees of deaf rage. And there are so many aspects of your work where you're kind of walking this line or mixing kind of, ideas that are like funny but not funny, and kind of, you want to talk, could you share a little more about maybe how you use humor in your art in a performance like this, or in those drawings I reference and other works in the show? It feels like a very important device in your art.
It is. I get this question asked quite often, so I have answers, but my theory about myself as it stands today is that I just wasn't funny growing up. I was not a funny kid. I was moody. I was angsty. But then when I started to socialize with hearing people, which I hadn't done up until that point because I liked being in my deaf bubble. I was comfortable with my deaf friends, using sign language every day. But then I had to go into the deaf world or the hearing world, and I needed to communicate what I needed, and I needed to do it quickly. And if I was too serious, I wasn't going to get what I wanted. But if I used humor that would put people at ease, they would maybe kind of realize I'm actually human and then connect with me, that I wasn't this dead specter haunting them. So I was able to then navigate the world a little bit better, especially in awkward situations with hearing people. If I employed humor to kind of force the interaction, I got a better response. People would be open to engaging with me. And it helped hearing people move on quicker from my deafness because of humor. And then in my work, I'm angry. I'm fucking pissed off. But humor helps people stay in the room with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could feel that. I wonder if we, just since I started to mention some of the other works on view, if you might, we could just talk for a little bit about the kind of process and experience of having a mid-career survey, if that's the right term for it. When I was a curator, before I became the director, that I curated a lot of those, and I worked closely with artists, and it was always, it's been a big part of the Whitney's history, and it was a part of, as I mentioned, my own professional background. And, what was this like? Was it sort of like exciting to look at your old work? Was there things you were disappointed by? Were there things that you remember differently than you experienced them today? I know that it can be a very complicated process for an artist to be faced with this kind of retrospection, and to bring that all together, and to want to leave things in a way clear, but also open-ended. And just, it'd be great if you could share with us something about just the feelings and the thoughts you had in the years that you were working on this exhibition with the curators, with Jenny and Pavel and Tom.
Okay, I love my curators. They're a great team. And everyone who here at the Whitney's gotten the exhibition up here are fantastic. So the Whitney has set up the bar high. So just warning you, Pavel, I'm ready for the walker. I'm ready to see what the team can do there. I'm excited. But so to answer your question, yes. As we started out in the process of preparing for this exhibition, I found the process difficult. In general, a lot of my meetings were at night. I live in Berlin, and I was Zooming with people in New York and in Minneapolis. And also, we had to make a timeline of my life. I felt like I was like almost writing my own autobiography. And so to go through that process, it was a lot. At the time that I received the offer from the Whitney to do an exhibition, I actually didn't have a database. And I had gotten a little money from the Ford Foundation, thankfully, which allowed me to set up my database. And so I've been able to do what I do thanks to the support of a lot of institutions, people, and galleries to get my practice to where it is now, which I'm so thankful for. But looking back is not fun, right? To have to look back at old art pieces that I've made from 2011 and earlier just made me want to cringe. I don't know. I made a lot of things that I would never want to do again. It's a hard thing to kind of look at yourself that way. I was hoping that we could push the date to later, like from 2015 on. But the curators were not having it. They wanted me to be in art history, and so I had to suck it up. And so when you go up to the 8th floor, when you enter the floor as you turn right, that section's a little hard for me to enter. But now that it's up and now that I've seen the exhibition on the floor, I've seen the catalog, it all makes sense to me. And so I've accepted it. And I think I'm finally at peace with it. My early works, I'm okay.
It's so funny to me that you say that, because I don't know, I'm trying to count, have curated 5 shows like this with living artists. And with the exception of Jasper Johns, they all began with a struggle about when does the work start. And Glenn Ligon's in the audience tonight. I remember we were like, is it, how far back can you pull that? And the curator always seems to want to get this like student work or something that nobody knows. And the artist is always like, let's push forward because I feel too exposed.
Yeah.
And why are you doing this to me?
Did you ask for student work from your artists?
I wouldn't say I asked for student work, although actually Glenn did show work he made at the ISP, so I don't know if that counts as student work.
Busted.
Jasper Johns was very smart because he destroyed all of the work, prior to a certain point when he became an artist.
Maybe I should do the same
so,
thing.
yeah, if you want to avoid being
Jasper.
embarrassed by a curator, if there are artists in the room tonight, fearful of that mid-career survey, just go ahead and destroy or hide all that work that you don't want people to see, because then you'll leave us all wondering. So we talked about maybe the process of making this show, and I wonder if we could also talk about the sort of experience or process of what happens when it goes on view. You have been with us so much at the Whitney doing so many different things, even though you live in Berlin, and I'm sure you're getting comments from people on social media and all around the world, and there's press that happens, and there are tours you're giving and events like tonight. Like, what is that like for an artist to be sort of situated in the kind of reception of the work? I remember my former colleague, Jane Panetta, who I mentioned earlier, working on the biennial with you, she used to say, Scott, when we pay an artist a participation fee at the Whitney, it's because like the minute their work goes on view, whether they even like do anything new for the show or not, they're like participating because there's stuff happening all around them. And have there been any experiences you want to share or thoughts you have about like what it's like to be alive while this show is alive, at the Whitney?
It's funny because that made Beth think like what you just said is the opposite of death. Living with it while it's alive. So I've been deep in the planning process of this exhibition for the past 2.5 years, and it's all I've thought about. When opening week arrived in February, I wanted to have fun. And I think that the hardest part of that whole week was guest list drama. It felt like wedding drama, like who sits at what table. I've had other events where I've had some bad experiences around the guest list and who was invited and who was not invited and lost friends over it. So I really had to be bossy. Like this group goes to party A, that group goes to party B, and the other group goes to party C. But I had so much fun. It was nice to be able to enjoy. I was also obsessed with being photographed because I wanted to document that deaf people were here. We were at the museum. We showed up. And it's also funny because at the opening party, as the night went on, deaf people were not leaving. They were not going anywhere. And I think maybe that was the first time in Whitney's history where you had to kick some people out because we weren't going to go unless otherwise told. But after that opening week ended, I went back home to Berlin. I went back to family life. And after a week or two, it would hit me that like, oh yeah, I have this exhibition up in New York. Like time would pass. It's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. And then I remember again that I'm at the Whitney, and now it's March and I'm back here for a week of programming. I'm at a different place than I was during the opening week. I'm just really emotional about it all because it's sunk in.
Wow. Well, we're emotional about it too. But I wonder, as we approached our time today, I'm looking, I know we're supposed to end by 8, if you would talk about, plans you have in your art or what you're thinking about next. You mentioned the book with primary information. It would be great if you wanted to share more about that. I know we have James Hoff representing primary information tonight, maybe more. But
James, am I allowed to say more?
Oh, if it's secret, I don't mean to pry.
I'm looking for you in the audience to get like a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
He's giving thumbs up.
Yes, that's a yes.
Yeah, I think
okay,
you
great.
should share because maybe we'll sell some books tonight, right? Can it be pre-ordered, James, on Amazon or somewhere? I don't know how that works. Probably.
I was like, I can probably see James in the audience. Okay, great. Yes, I got affirmation. So this book is untitled, but might be something like Deaf Materials. So as you saw, I've collected pictures of universal access, that is the blue signage around disability. I've done that all over the world. I've collected these images everywhere I've gone. And what these signs do is actually show us what the country's view on disability is. So sometimes it's this sticker, sometimes it's a sign that was there but is hanging on by just one screw instead of all four. So it shows me what the view is and the concepts and the presumptions around disability from each country. So I've collected those. I also have a ton of images of celebrities from all over the world doing I love you, because in the deaf community, the sign for I love you is an actual sign. But for celebrities, a lot of it is like a way to say one world, one love, right? We have pop stars who do it. I have a photo of Obama doing the I love you sign, and I've collected these. And actually, if I can ask something from the audience, is that there is a picture of Princess Diana doing I love you, but nobody can find it. So if anyone has that picture, can you please send it to me? I know it's not the Mandela effect. I know it's real. I know it exists. And so I want images like this to be in the book. The designer of the book, whose name is Bryce, just showed me the first draft yesterday. Wow, that was already yesterday. Okay, wow. And I was able to leaf through the draft of the book and seeing what pages will be in color and what pages will be in black and white. I had the chance a while back to go to Gallaudet University to work with the archivist who runs the archives at Gallaudet University. His name is Jim. And I was able to go through all these old magazines from the 60s, the 70s. And one of my favorite things that I found, which will be in the book, was during the era of Gallaudet University not being a university, but rather a college. And they were trying to increase their enrollment of deaf students. And the way that they did that is they had an application for Gallaudet College as a page in a magazine. And you just ripped out the application, you just filled it out, you put it in an envelope, licked it shut, and mailed it out to Gallaudet. And it just felt like such a deaf community thing to do. So that was one of my favorite finds in the archives. And so when this book comes out, please get a copy.
Is it going to be very long? It sounds, sounds like an encyclopedia.
The thickness is something like, if you see my hand,
okay.
What's that, like an inch? I don't know. It's easier to show in sign language than to say it in English, I suppose.
Well, so that's a book project. Do you have other projects that you want to share? Or maybe what you're thinking about? Are you back in the studio after all this curating time? Are you itching to make drawings? You mentioned thinking about performance again.
Oh, I'm working on a lot of stuff, baby.
Okay, good.
So I'm really excited that I have a show that will be at the Francois Gabali Gallery in Los Angeles, which will be opening on May 3rd. So I'll be in LA for that, for the opening. I also have a few talks lined up. And then my partner, Tom, who's also my collaborator, we have a duo practice. Tom, can you wave? Oh, he's in the fourth row here, yes. That's my husband. Yeah. We have a duo practice, and so we have a very exciting exhibition that's coming up at the Welcome Collection, which is an institution or a museum around medicine and sciences, and it's a beautiful space in London. And what I love is that this guy, Welcome, who got wealthy enough to create a space like this, is with an invention that he came up with in the medical field, because historically people always were taking medicine as a powder that was mixed with water, but he came up with the idea to put that powder in a capsule and then people could just swallow it, which is how we all take medicine now. He patented that and much more innovations of his, and so he used that money to create the Welcome Collection. They have an amazing staff. Their lunch is fantastic. I could eat that lunch every day. And so Tom and I are going to be having a duo exhibition titled 1880 That.
I just want to thank you, Christine. We are so honored to have you here tonight, to get to live with your work. I feel so lucky. My office is on the 8th floor. Every day I get off the elevator and walk into your show, or am greeted by that beautiful, incredible mural. And it's just really a pleasure to get to see this show unfold. There's so much in it that takes time. Sound pieces, video, even just kind of learning through your drawings, and we're really grateful. So I'd like to end with that. And for anyone here who has not seen the show, please, I'm sure you all have seen it. And if you'd like to see it again and again, come back. The Whitney, we are very proud to say, is free every Friday night for everyone from 5 to 10 p.m., the second Sunday of every month, and all the time if you're 25 and under. So I hope you will be here again and again, enjoying Christine's art and all the exhibitions we have coming on view. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Scott. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the curatorial team of this exhibition, the Whitney team, the interpreters, everyone. Thank you.